We all think we know what's best for us, but what if we all really have no concept of what is safe and what's dangerous to consume? The point of this speech is to inform the public of how to include genetically modified foods into a healthy, balanced diet. Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, as they are sometimes known as, are natural and not inherently bad for an individual's health. Throughout modern history, GMOs have been sold as crazy evil science. However, in this speech, I will strive to prove that these organisms are natural, beneficial, and above all, safe to eat. The first fact to consider when contemplating GMOs as they relate to your diet is that they are naturally occurring in most instances. They've occurred throughout history. Defining GMOs is the first point to look at. Webster's Online Dictionary defines genetically as an adverb describing the relationship of or determination by their origin. Modification as a verb meaning the limiting or changing of state of a being. Organism as a complex structure of independent and or subordinate elements whose relations and properties are largely determined by the function of the whole. All this means is that genetically modified organisms can be defined as a complex structure of elements whose relations and properties are largely determined by their function in the whole that is changed from a determined original state of being. Or in much simpler terms, any living thing that is changed from its original conceptual beginning is a genetically modified organism. Basically, anything that starts off as one thing and gets slightly changed throughout its entirety of its lifespan is genetically modified. All living organisms go through change throughout their lifespan due to facts such as cross-pollination, chemicals, food supply, sunlight, water, and predators. Everything from human beings to plants to molds to fungus to bacteria goes through these changes. The best and easiest way to explain the natural cases of genetic modification is through explaining cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is explained quite well in the article published by Harvard Business Review. The article is entitled Perfect Cross-Pollination by Lee Fleming. Mr. Lee Fleming goes into depth about how cross-pollination happened naturally. He uses the idea of distance between neighboring fields, how one field, one being sweet corn and one being field corn, can cross-pollinate with each other, causing pollen to go from the sweet corn to the feed corn and feed corn to the sweet corn, causing sweet corn to be firmer in grain, more like a feed corn, and feed corn to be sweeter, more like sweet corn. This changes simple genetic makeup by which pollen gets in which seed holes. So it's like an egg meeting a sperm. The seeds or offspring change slightly from the original design. This is an easy example of GMOs that happen naturally and are consumed without a second thought. No one thinks when they eat sweet corn, oh, this is slightly firmer. It must have been cross-pollinated with feed corn. I would never eat something that's cross-pollinated with feed corn. It's not something you think on a day-to-day basis. Then there's the fact that these genetically modified plants make it possible for humankind to sustain the way of life most of us are accustomed to, as well as providing enough food to handle the ever-rising numbers of humans on planet Earth. The human population has grown 1.18% in the last year, according to World Matters. This means that if the trend continues, 1 year from today, the population of humans on Earth will be 8,687,726,054 people. The only way these kinds of numbers can be supported is by scientists finding out better ways to plant crops on land that could not have been planted on previously, such as swamps, deserts, floodlands, mountainsides, and the tundra. One example of a crop that has already been modified to sustain life is the white long grain rice in China. The rice has been modified to hold up to flooding rice paddies, meaning that this new strain of rice could be planted in rice paddies that had typically been too wet to sustain a rice crop previously. This change increased rice production in China by 3 times the original amount. Genetically modified foods can also make it possible to stock first world country grocery stores to the degree that we are accustomed to. 70% of foods that are genetically modified or contain genetically modified foods, according to Monsanto. This means that without the large percentage of GMOs, most of the foods in grocery stores today could not be produced. Most foods, if not all foods consumers eat on a day-to-day basis, are made up of GMOs. You're already eating them in your diet. Finally, the public needs to know that genetically modified foods are safe to eat. According to Gannett University's article, GMOs, the health benefits have a large market potential, published in Science Daily, there are a lot of genetically modified crops that have been developed to be higher in provitamins. This means that some of these plants have been modified using completely natural gene splices to make rice high in vitamin A or Oreos higher in level of vitamin D. Both of these things are good for consumers in different situations. The rice is great in third world countries, but they typically would not have gotten enough vitamins to keep them healthy, such as China's poor rice fields or even in Central Africa. Then there are the junk foods that are enriched so that even in this country, where the overeating of junk foods has taken over our day-to-day eating habits, everyone can get the nutrients they need to stay relatively healthy. I'm talking about the people who only eat like Oreos and chips and peanut butter sandwiches. These things have all been enriched to keep people healthy even though they aren't eating what they necessarily need to be eating to stay healthy. However, when asked, 57% of the general public thought GMOs were unsafe and only 33% thought they were safe. Whereas 88% of AAAS scientists think that they are completely safe to consume, meaning the large majority of scientists think that we should be eating these things. These things are okay for us to eat. But over half the general public thinks because it's modified by science, it's not healthy because it's not all natural. This shows that most of the people are just biased against GMOs, and it's personal, not scientific. Because if we're looking at scientific facts, it goes along with the same arguments as vaccines and all the things that we don't trust scientists, even though it's their job to do this. As far as scientists are concerned, GMOs seem to be healthy, beneficial, and natural products that should be part of our day-to-day lives. Everyone should look into including these products in our lives because they make life more sustainable on an overpopulated planet that keeps us all moving forward. In reality, I didn't need to tell you all about how to include these products in your diet because they're already in your diet. I just really need to convince more of you that they are really safe. This is the future. The future is genetically modified. That's it. That's how to.